Okay, so today's September 29th. I had a question last week with regard to blues, and I guess basically how I would start somebody out, learning the blues. Blues is really important to know. You should, when you want to play out and play in bands and stuff like that, you really should learn the blues changes. And there's a whole bunches of types of blues changes. You got your jazz blues, you got your rock blues, then you've got variations of those types of blues. There's just a whole bunch of things going on there. I'm gonna approach this a little bit differently. There's so many great resources out there, like the Jamie Aebersold books. If you don't have those books, you really should get at least volume 1, which is basically an introduction. A lot of reading in there, but it's all worthwhile stuff. And there's playing along tracks in there. There's melodies to play along with as well. But you're going to be learning with these Jamie Aebersold books how to play along with backing tracks and such. So I would suggest that you get the Jamie Aebersold book, Volume 1, and it's basically how to improvise, how to learn how to improvise. The one thing that I would say to you, if you're learning the blues, and unfortunately I was taught this way, and I see a lot of people taught this way as well. They're taught, okay, just learn the blues scale, and just noodle around the blues scale, and you got it. That's all you need to do. No. Sure, you could learn that blues scale, and you could play a great blues, and let me just play a track for you for a second.
1, 2.
Here's just the blues scale.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Sure, I could play around the blues scale, no problem. But you know what? If you start out that way, you're missing out on a whole bunch of things. Number one, you're missing out on learning all the chord changes, and you're just relying on just a few notes. And what I find with a lot of students when they first start out, they do something like this. Let me get the background a little bit lower here.
1.
They wind up doing something like this. You don't want to do this.
3, 4.
Now, is that wrong? It's not that it's wrong, but there's no feeling to that. There's no understanding behind that. So if I were to teach a student, who wants to learn how to play the blues, first I have to get some information. Number one, how much understanding do you have of scales and chords? Do you need a tremendous amount? No, but I need to know that kind of information. Two, how much blues have you listened to? Okay, you can't. It makes it difficult to play a genre of music if you haven't listened to it. So, the danger is, especially when we're teaching younger kids, they really haven't listened to the blues for the most part, so they don't have that background, they don't have that vocabulary in their head of things that may sound good. So how much listening to the blues have you done? Okay, and it doesn't have to be on your instrument. Okay, it could be, if you haven't heard B.B. King on the blues, you know what I mean? You've got to listen to like the greats on the blues. B.B. King, even Stevie Ray Vaughan, all these folks, Coltrane, all that type of thing. So how much listening have you done? Understanding of scales, of chords, okay? What your range is on your instrument, that kind of thing. So I would not start with the blues scale because you're really not promoting an understanding of the blues. And then later on, when you try to learn those chord changes, it makes it a little bit harder, to be honest with you. So the way I would start, the first thing, I'd do a lot of listening, and then with a background track, I'd put the background track on, and I'd make sure I could identify when the chords change. So one exercise I have people do, I put the background track on, And every time you hear, you're not looking at music, every time you hear a chord change, just raise your hand. Okay, so for example, it's going.
1, 2, 1, 2.
So we're going to start with the chord change, right? So here. This is just basic blues. Okay, so there's your standard blues changes. 1 to the 4 to the 1, then 4 to the 1, and then 2, 5, 1, 5. Okay, standard, I'm going to call that a jazz blues. Rock blues changes the last 4 measures. So first identify the chord changes. Now for some people that's a little challenging, and that's fine. Recognize it as something to work on and keep listening and listening and listening for the chord changes. And it's going to click in time. You got to be patient with it. The next step, and these are things that Jamie Aebersold talks about in his book. A lot of people talk about this. You'd look at the, if you're doing this by ear, it's going to be a little bit more challenging. But if you're looking at, like, Jamie Aebersold book, you'd look at the chord changes, and the first thing you do would be play the roots. So you'd play the roots to the chord changes. So, for example,
1, 2.
This is concert B flat blues.
2, 3, 4.
Play the roots. But you notice I didn't just hold out whole notes. Okay? I kind of made it a little bit more interesting. I played rhythms. I improvised rhythms. So what I would say is, yeah, play the roots to the chords and improvise your own rhythms. Then the next step would be to identify the third of the chord. Okay? And then do the same thing. Improvise your own rhythms to that. Then identify the seventh. You notice I'm skipping the fifth. I'll say why in a minute. I'd identify the seventh of the chord, and I'd improvise my own rhythms. Okay, and take your time with this stuff. You're not going to do all this stuff in one lesson. I'm skipping the fifth because, to be honest with you, the bass is going to be hitting. The bass is going to be hitting the fundamentals of each chord. They're going to be hitting the root. They're going to be hitting the third. They're going to be hitting, the fifth sometimes and the sevenths. You don't have to play the fifth. Okay, it's not as important a note as the third and the seventh. The third and the seventh define the chord. Hey, Gerald. The third and the seventh define the chord. So those are the notes you really want to think about. Now, if you're someone that doesn't read music, you're looking at like C7 chord and you have no idea what that means. Well, what makes up a chord is this. It's the root, it's the 1 of the chord, the first degree of the scale, the third degree of the scale, the 5th degree of the scale, and the 7th degree of the scale. Okay? So if it's a C7 chord, C is the root, C, D, E is the third, E, F, G, that's the 5th, A, B flat, not B natural, B flat is the 7th. It's a dominant 7 chord. When you see C7, it means dominant 7. So the 7th degree is lowered by a half step. Okay? So C, E, G, B flat. Those are the main notes of the chord. And I'm looking at the E, the third, and the B flat, the 7th. So the thing is this, when you hear really good soloists, they're connecting the thirds of the chords to the 7ths. Think about it. In a blues, let's take that first line. C7 on tenor, right? So C7 is the first chord, so the third's an E. The next chord's an F7. Let's see. So the third's an A. All right, that's cool, but the 7th degree of that F7 is an E flat. Huh. So E from the C connects to the E flat from the F. And then we go back to the C chord. I'm playing an E again. So let me just show you that. Let's see.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
I'm going to go to the 4 now. Back to the 1. Now to the 2. There's there's a line there. We call that voice leading. So what I suggest for people to do after you've identified your thirds and played them, after you identify the sevenths and played them, map out how your thirds for one chord go to the seventh of the next chord. Map it out. Think it through. Go over the fingerings first and then play it. Then flip it. Map out your sevenths going to the thirds. Map it out. Write it out if you need to. That's perfectly fine. Play it, and there you go. So, and this is nothing new. I'm not getting to the new stuff yet. But this would be basic stuff. And again, this is not over one lesson. This would be over, a series of lessons. When you want to really learn something, you're not going to learn it like a magic pill. It's not going to happen like that. Okay, it's going to happen over time. All right? So take your time with this. The next thing that I would do, I would outline the chords, but I wouldn't outline all the chords. I would pretend I'd be like a 50s tenor saxophone player who's playing, this time I would play the fifth, so I'd be doing this.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
And I was thinking 50s, and the funny thing is that with 50s, like rock and stuff like that, it's all based on the blues, on the rock blues. At the last four measures, they do a 5/7 to a 4 to the 1. So I was starting to go there. All right, so I pretend to be a 50s saxophone player, and I do like what the bass line would be doing. 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5. I'd have fun with that for a little bit. And that's a good skill to learn, by the way, if you're the type of person that's playing in cover bands and stuff like that, and you're doing some of that, some of those classic rock tunes. It's basically blues for the most part. Now, here's the other new tip, so to speak, and I'm not the first one to say this either, but here's a tip to help people if you're having a problem navigating the chords, and this is all new to you. After you've gone through hearing the chord changes, identifying the roots, thirds and sevenths, and making up your own rhythms, that's the key. Okay, that's really the key, because it gets your creative juices flowing, and the fact of the matter is what makes a really good solo isn't 12,000 notes, okay, it's making the solo rhythmic, all right, something that the audience can relate to, okay, getting in the pocket with your rhythm section. But after you've done that, if you're still having a problem navigating the chords or even the chord scales, take it out of time. I don't mean not playing with a metronome. I mean, take that first chord. Let me get my metronome going up here for a second. Take that first chord, put your metronome on, and just play that first chord for as long as you want until you're comfortable with it, and then move to the next chord. So I'm also going to do something different here. I'm not going to put my metronome, let me do the wrong thing here. I'm not going to do that, where I'm setting the metronome at the quarter note. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set the metronome to, I'm going to think of the metronome clicking on the second and the fourth beats. So I'm going to set this at 60. And here's what I do. I count off 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. When I'm ready, I'm going to press the on button for the metronome once I hit the second or the fourth beat. So this way I get the feel, okay, the feel, the swing beat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Now as that's going, I'm just going to take that first chord, right, the C7 chord, the C7 scale. I'm just going to noodle around with it until I'm really comfortable it's in my fingers. and then I'd move to the next chord. I was dying actually to move to the next chord. That's why I was kind of hinting at some of those notes. I would hang out on that C7 chord for a while, and then when I'm comfortable, play the F7 chord. Do the same type of thing. Don't play outside the key. Stick in the key. Okay. Yeah, stick in the key. You're better off doing that. And once you hit a chord that you're not comfortable with, or a chord or a chord scale, like for example, when we get to more advanced blues changes, there's a diminished scale, the 4 diminished scale. Once you're, if you're not comfortable with that scale, put the metronome on and play that. So for example, with a C, blues in C or concert B flat, you have your 1 chord, go into the 4. It's going to quickly go to a 4 diminished, and then it goes back to the 1. And then the 2 and 5 of the 4 chord. So now it's the F for me, right? Then the next measure is the 4 diminished. Well, that's not a common, it's not a common scale that people play, not a common chord. So I'd maybe hang out on that. I hope I said that right, sorry. Hi from Brazil. So I take that 4 diminished chord and chord scale, and I'd hang out on that. I'd play that a little bit. I'd hang out on that for a little bit. Sorry, I got a little bit distracted here. And then I'd go on to the next chord. So that's one tip I'd have for you. If you're not comfortable with your chord scales, then I would definitely do that. See, the thing is this. I'm finding that, just as a little bit of a recap. And by the way, keep forgetting to mention this. Please share this live. It helps, especially when there's questions and stuff like that. Although the questions sometimes can be a little bit distracting when you're doing this live, but it also helps too. And also check out my website, DonnaSchwartzMusic.com, for more videos, and sign up for weekly practice tips and other types of things to help improve your playing. Just as a quick recap, I would not start people learning the blues on a blues scale. Okay, that comes in time. There's no harmonic basis if you start on a blues scale. It just gets too confusing. So I would take the time, enjoy the process, and work through understanding the chords and the chord changes. And then once I hit a chord that I don't understand, I'd put the metronome on. I'd set it to beat on 2 and 4. I'm thinking of beating it on 2 and 4. So I've got mine at 60. And what I do, I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. So I'm thinking of it beating on the upbeats, on the 2s and the 4s. And I take a chord scale that I'm not comfortable with, and I noodle around with it, Okay. Then I'd move on to the next chord, okay? So that's going to be my tips for right now. Get really comfortable with it, because as one person noted when they made a comment on this particular post, they said, if you don't know your blues, and you're out, you want to play in a cover band, you don't know your blues, you're going to have a really hard time, all right? So take the time, use the Jamie Aebersold books. There's plenty of also resources on YouTube for backing tracks, but use those Jamie Aebersold books to help you. They write out the chord scales for you, and they darken in the notes that are the main notes of the chord. So that's going to help you to learn your chords as well. And just have fun, play along with it. But more important than anything else, you can't learn the style of something if you're not listening to it. If you don't listen to the blues and then you expect to go on a gig or an audition or a jam session and be asked to play it, the blues is not coming out of you, okay? Something else is coming out, and it's not going to be authentic. So in order to really understand something, you've got to do a lot of listening. That's what the masters did back then. I think our generation's kind of losing sight of that. We're the instant gratification generation, and we need to kind of get away from that and start really putting the time in, enjoying the time we're putting in, and learning something in depth. There's no magic pill for learning the blues. There's no magic pill for learning any instrument. I don't care what it is. You've got to put the time in, and you got to enjoy what you're doing and enjoy where you're at. So I hope a couple of these tips helped you with your journey of starting to learn the blues. And if you have any other questions, submit them to me on my Facebook page, Donna Schwartz Music. Go to my website, check it out, sign up. Okay. Right now, the free thing you can get is a video, 3 tips to fatten up your saxophone sound. So check it out, sign up. Please share this replay. Thanks for joining me amidst all the technical difficulties I had. I apologize for that. And again, I hope this video helped you. All right, on that note, take care. Have a great day.